in the United States that if China is advanced, they must have cheated to do it. How could they be a competitor with us, after all?
Hey guys, welcome back to Nifty Invest. In an interview with David Sachs, an American economist and director of the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University, he discusses how the world has changed since the industrial era, the rise of the brightest countries, and the U.S.'s struggle to accept a multipolar world. Sachs believes that the rise of China and India has not necessarily diminished the well-being of the U.S. or Europe. Instead, he emphasizes the win-win nature of the world economy, where gains from trade and technological advancements can and should spread around the world. However, the U.S. political class resents and fears China's success, and the geostrategists who think in terms of zero-sum struggles think that China's advances are detrimental to the U.S. Sachs believes that this mindset is dangerous and could lead to confrontation and conflict. He suggests that the U.S. needs to overcome its fear and work towards systematic dialogue and negotiation with China. The industrial era began in England, which became the first industrial global empire, ruling much of the world during the 19th century. Other European countries formed their own empires in Africa and Asia, and the Western-led or North Atlantic-led world continued throughout the 20th century. However, after two disastrous world wars and a Great Depression, the global leadership of the North Atlantic shifted from Western Europe and Britain to the United States. The U.S. has been the dominant power since 1945. With the independence of India, the end of empire across Africa, and the restoration of real sovereignty of China, the world economy has rebalanced, and the spread of technology has become far more equal. China has become one of the leading economies and centers of innovation in the world, and India is one of the fastest-growing large economies of the world. Sachs notes that the world's changing, and for him, a notable point is that the brightest countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, now, when measured at so-called international prices, have larger output than the G7 countries. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content we do here on this channel. Let's get right into the video.
The industrial era began in England. It's therefore no real surprise that England or Britain became the first industrial global empire. And Britain ruled the seas and really ruled much of the world during the 19th century. And other European newly industrialized countries formed their own empires in Africa and in Asia. And that Western-led or North Atlantic-led world continued throughout the 20th century. But after two disastrous world wars and a Great Depression, the global leadership of the North Atlantic shifted from Western Europe and Britain to the United States. So the U.S. has been the dominant power since 1945. But with independence of India, the end of empire across Africa, the restoration of real sovereignty of China, starting with the formation of the People's Republic in 1949, and with the economics that has followed that, the world economy has rebalanced. The spread of technology has become far more equal. China, of course, has become one of the lead economies and centers of innovation of the world. India is one of the fastest growing large economies of the world. The world's changing. And for me, a notable point is that the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, now when measured at so-called international prices, have larger output than the G7 countries, than the United States, Canada, Britain, France, Italy, Germany, and Japan. So that's a notable change. All of this means we're moving to a multipolar world. None of it means that the United States likes it or accepts it right now. So psychologically, the U.S. is having a very hard time, and it's trying to hold on to its dominance. But that's just not possible in a world of diverse talents, skills, innovation, economy. when the U.S. is just 4% of the world population. You know, as an economist, I'm a believer in a win-win world. I don't believe that globalization or the rise of China or the rise of India or the rise of Africa in any way diminishes the opportunities for well-being in the United States or Europe. Indeed, I think it enhances those possibilities. In any event, we need cooperation to face challenges like human-induced climate change.
Sachs emphasizes that he is a believer in a win-win world, and he does not believe that globalization or the rise of China or India in any way diminishes the opportunities for well-being in the US or Europe. He thinks that it enhances those possibilities. He notes that we need cooperation to face challenges like human-induced climate change, and for all of those reasons, he believes in a win-win world where gains from trade and advances in the economy, from technological advances, can and should spread around the world. However, the U.S. political class resents and fears China's success. The geostrategists, who think in terms of zero-sum struggles, think that China's advances are detrimental to the U.S. Sachs thinks that this mindset is dangerous and could lead to confrontation and conflict. He suggests that the U.S. needs to overcome its fear and work towards systematic dialogue and negotiation with China. Sachs notes that China has been the most successful, sustained 40-year economic development and growth of any large economy in history. Sachs sees China's rise as an extraordinarily positive development, and he believes that it is all to the good.
So, for all of those reasons, I believe in a win-win world where gains from trade and advances in economy from technological advances can and should spread around the world. If you are a military strategist or a geopolitical strategist, it seems that the feeling is quite different, that the gain of the other is somehow a loss for you. And so I know that international relations realists sometimes think that China's rise is detrimental to the United States. It's a different mindset. I think it's a dangerous mindset, actually, to think in that way, because it almost inevitably leads to confrontation and the real chance of deadly conflict. And so I want to emphasize the win-win nature of the world economy. It's not one region's gain necessarily at the expense of the other. Everybody can benefit from the advancement of know-how and technology and scientific understanding. The United States strategists and politicians didn't want a peer or a rival competitor, and then China showed up on the scenes as a large, successful economy that for 40 years plus, since 1980, has been one of the most dynamic parts of the world economy, and now at the cutting edge of many leading technologies. And I think the United States political class resents this, is fearful of it. The geostrategists who think in terms of zero-sum struggles think that China's advances to the detriment of the United States. Again, a mindset I don't believe and don't accept, and think is actually a very dangerous one. But most of this is a reaction to China's success. And I think that it needs to be overcome through systematic dialogue, negotiation, hammering out solutions where there are real differences, not the shouting, the finger pointing, the kind of hysteria.
Sachs believes that the world is moving towards a multipolar world, and the U.S. is having a hard time accepting it. Sachs thinks that it is not possible for the U.S. to hold onto its dominance in a world of diverse talents, skills, innovations, and economies when the U.S. is just 4% of the world population. Sachs believes that the world is moving towards a win-win world, and he thinks that it is dangerous for the U.S. to think in zero-sum terms. Sachs emphasizes that we need to work hard so that the mindset of fear and zero-sum thinking does not overwhelm us and does not lead to open conflict, which it could.
Of course, there's a lot of prejudice built in as well. You mentioned Yellow Peril 2.0. Well, there is some feeling wrong in the United States that if China is advanced, they must have cheated to do it. How could they be a competitor with us, after all? This is pretty ingrained and is wrong. I say to these people, get a passport, go take a visit, go learn something, read some history, understand the long sweep of history. I wrote a book in 2020 called The Ages of Globalization, in which China features for hundreds and hundreds of years as the world-leading economy, the source of major technological advances. I explain the swings that happened afterwards, but I see China's recovering a natural position as one of the world leaders in innovation and technology. And from my point of view, that's all to the good. But this is not the mindset right now. And I think we have to work hard so that the mindset of fear and zero-sum thinking doesn't overwhelm us and doesn't lead to open conflict, which it could. China has been the most successful, sustained 40-year economic development and growth of any large economy in history. What's happened in the period since 1980 is extraordinary and extraordinarily positive. China went from being a society with most people living in poverty. The numbers depend on definitions, but 60% poor, some estimate 80% poor, to ending poverty in its extreme form by 2020. Well, that's a phenomenal achievement, and it reflects a mixed economic system, both market and state, private and public, a tremendous capacity to plan at the National Development and Reform Commission, among other institutions, the tremendous capacity to build infrastructure, thousands and thousands of kilometers of fast intercity rail, of roads, of a power system, and so forth, on a massive scale. And the Chinese economy lives on that physical infrastructure that connects the entire country. I've been watching this process closely since my first visit to China 42 years ago. So I came in 1981. China was very poor then. This was very clear just by looking at life as one would see it on the streets or in the shops.